everyone. My name is Kathy Chena, and welcome to the After Hours Chat. Tonight, our guest is Kaylin Lackton, and she is going to be talking to us about a very serious topic, something that is in the news almost every day now. We know it's not the end, sadly, but she's going to be talking to us about residential schools. So I'm going to be passing it on to you, Kaylin. Please go ahead. We have about 12 to 14 minutes, and yeah, so tell us what's going on and what is happening and how are you feeling about the things that you're discovering every day now?
Thank you for having me on here, first off. And yeah, it's been really interesting to just trying to find the right words to kind of describe the emotions of, I could just say, have been grief and mourning, and it's just been a lot of hurt and anger that are just kind of going through the communities all over the country, honestly. And just to acknowledge that today they found another 182 unmarked graves in the Kootenays, and just seeing that, like, it, my husband's been around there, and it's a golf course and a resort. Like, you just putting that into perspective, it's you're playing golf on shallow graves of young children. So it's and that's a new one that for myself, where I'm just kind of processing. So just a little bit of like my own history. Like, I'm not an expert in other people's stories, and I'm not here to tell their stories. But for my own story, my dad was part of the 60 scoop. So he was adopted out as a young child. My grandparents and my uncles and aunties went to the residential school. I believe my grandmother went to the residential school in Kamloops, BC, where I'm currently actually am right now. And I did have family who went to the Williams Lake residential school, the one that was near there. And then I have family all over BC. So I'm slowly learning my own culture. I was also in the foster system at a young age, till I was about 11. And in those times, like when I turned 25, I think is when I really started learning about my culture and my heritage, and really diving deep into it. And yeah, but during the time I was in high school, I actually wrote a story on the residential schools, and I was able to have the privilege to interview a survivor. And she was amazing. She was absolutely amazing. And she came forward, and she talked to me with such grace and honesty and vulnerability. And yeah, it was an amazing moment to sit with her during the time where I was still lost and confused about my own heritage and culture. Yeah, I apologize. I'm a little all over the place right now, going back and forth. However, after the findings in Kamloops, I took a week of it hit harder than I expected. And when we did the land acknowledgement for our board meeting, a lot of emotions came up for me, and I can still feel it. And I think that's why I'm a little all over the place right now, is because I still feel the emotions and the vulnerability. And they're still quite raw. And especially like right now, I'm on this journey of recovering of my own heritage and culture and learning it. I'm still in the process of getting my status, because my dad was a part of the 60 scoop. it's been a complete disaster trying to figure it out. And it's just been, yeah, insane on getting status. There's so much red flags. I did see a question come up. Institutional trauma. Do you mean intergenerational trauma? So with intergenerational trauma, I actually worked in addictions prior, and I worked with a lot of the bands, and I went to many workshops and talked to many knowledge keepers and elders, and they are trying to stop the intergenerational trauma. It's just, we talk about it all the time, that our bodies hold the trauma, our bodies hold what has happened to us, and then as women, like when we give birth, our baby, that generational trauma gets transferred to that. The trauma from our bodies does get transferred to our child, and it's something, and it says it can take up to 7 years or 7 generations, 7 generations to actually stop the intergenerational trauma. We're not even at 7 generations. I'm 3rd generation of residential school survivor. I'm 2nd generation of the 60 scoop of the survivors. And so we're still very much, it's still very present and here. And I think that's the anger I felt recently has been about people talking about, it's in our past, it's in our history. The last one was in 1997. I was born in 91. I've met people who went to school during times where other, their friends or, people they've, grew up beside were going to a residential school while they were going to regular school. I did see another question here.
As if you can make your questions public, please, so we can also see what the questions are, that would be great.
So what does truth and reconciliation mean to you? What do you want non-First Nations to understand? So, okay. Thank you for your question. My question is how we can help. Okay. So with truth and reconciliation, there comes with there's 96 truth and reconciliation acts that they've been trying to do. I don't even think they've done 10, that the government has even done 10 of those 96 truth and reconciliation process, like the next steps that they were trying to do. They're still fighting in court with some survivors. I feel like everything's starting to speed up a little bit because of the recent findings, which it shouldn't have been like that. Survivors should have been believed a long time ago, at the very beginning. And I think patience right now. Patrick talked to me and asked, about myself, as well as like talking about an elder or bringing someone in who's experienced it. And I was very honest, and I said, right now it's not a good time to talk to anybody about their experience, because there is mourning and there's grieving that's happening right now. And the question with how you can be a part of the healing process is listening, advocating for the systematic racism that is still happening in our country today. When you see stuff about the orange shirts, you know, cancel Canada Day, I've seen a lot of backlash about that from certain people, and it's not, someone worded it really well, that it's not a cancel Canada Day forever. It's, this year is a time for mourning and a time for grief, and allowing the people to honor that and to honor the children. Someone put where it would take 14 years at right now of the current children who have been found now to do full-fledged traditional wakes for them, where they're only asking for 1 day. And so right now, yeah, as a non-First Nations person, it's being empathetic, advocating for, again, systematic racism that is happening and is still constantly happening all the time. I was just reading in 2019, they just abolished the, I believe it's called the BC Alerts Act or something like that, where if you were an Indigenous person, they automatically called welfare on you if you were having a baby. And that was abolished in 2019. So it's very, like, it's still very here. It's still very now. And so I guess to summarize it all up, and again, I apologize, I was kind of all over the place. Show empathy, and again, show your own vulnerability as well. And it's okay to be sad. It's okay to grieve with the First Nations community. We're grieving as a country together. And I don't think people fully understand that. Even though there's two separate communities at the same time, it's still found, you know, it's still children that are found, and we're all going to feel that. So thank you. Thank you again.
I think that before we move on, if we could just kindly have just a moment of silence for everyone that's grieving and mourning right now. Because as I said, it's just Canada's just scratching the surface on what's going on and what's to come. And that it breaks all of our hearts. We are with you and we will mourn with you. And I want to thank you so much for being here. But let's just have a moment of silence and thanks. Okay, thank you again. Patrick, do you want to come back on? There were some questions that people had written in the chat here. Please, no offense taken if any of the questions come out of, ignorance or anything like that. It's just we want to learn and we want to understand things a little bit better ourselves. One of the questions is, why do you feel or think that it's taken so long to uncover these graves and make this public?
A lot of survivors weren't actually believed during that time frame, and the Catholic Church or whomever was running that residential school failed to report what was actually happening, unfortunately. And so there was suspicion. And I know, our criminal law, I don't know our criminal law very well. However, if there's suspicion of a body being in any area, usually they do their due diligence to uncover and to look and see if that evidence is there or if it is to be true. And in this case, they were able to put together this money for this new groundbreaking radar system where they could essentially see underground using this system. And it's what revealed everything. And so when one school has revealed these mass of unmarked graves, it does call to continue. It's like dominoes. They'll continue until every school. Thank you for your question.
Could you tell us what the scoop is? You referred to it a couple of times, the 60 scoop. What is that?
Okay. So the 60 scoop was between the 60s and it was during the 60s and the 70s, but it's more formally known as the 60 scoop. My dad was adopted in 75. So essentially what the 60 scoop was First Nations children were taken away from their families forcefully, or they were given a choice as to send your kid to residential school or have them adopted out. Mostly it was to Protestant families, white families, and in some cases they were adopted out all over the world. There is a story about a girl who was adopted out she was adopted in Australia, and she came back actually and found her birth family in Canada. There's legitimate ads if you do decide to Google afterwards, and you Google 60 Scoop. There's legit ads for First Nation children, like that they would put in the newspaper. Yeah.
And this is why you don't have status yet, because you're trying to get through all this red tape because of that.
Yeah, they legally changed my dad's First Nation name into a white name. And so they completely dismantled that whole, and it's just been, I've been walking this path. He's almost 50 now, and we've been walking this path together, and it's just been bureaucratic red tape to getting his original birth certificate.
Right.
So, yeah.
What are some of the horrific stories that you've heard that have happened, firsthand from people that survived in these residential schools? Can you share a couple of those stories with us?
Yeah, from things that I've heard and are actually very common. There's lots of sexual abuse. There was lots of sexual abuse for both male and female students. And there was one story that, really affected me was our braid, our hair is to represent your spirit. And as soon as you were taken, your hair was cut off. Even if you were a girl, your braid was just chopped off. As well as malnutrition, beatings for using your language. That's why there's actually a lot of First Nation languages that have been lost because of this fact. You weren't allowed to use your language. So some language has been forgotten, and language keepers are very rare and very dear to the bands.
Ladies, any last questions? We'll take one more.
I heard today that the First Nation leaders are actually meeting the Pope on December, and they're expecting an apology from the church. And I truly hope that they declare and explain to all the Catholics out there the injustice that were done to the children of this country.
Yeah. I did hear that the Pope did say eventually that he would prefer to apologize in person.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as I mentioned before, we have a show to get through tonight with tears or no tears. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing just a small fraction of what you shared, and our hearts are with you.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you again for having me.
Okay.
And Kathy, you do have my information. You have my email. Feel free.
I do.
To, if anyone has any other questions, you can email me as well.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Well.
That was so sad.
Yeah, you guys can all you can all unmute now if you want. That would be good.
Yeah, I just, you know what? There's just so much that I'm first generation Canadian. My family's all from Europe, and there's so much that I never knew about. I only learned about Orange Shirt Day and anything when my daughter started kindergarten 4 years ago, and she's teaching me now. And we have asked her school, we want education, not just our children, we want the education as well. And I want to know more. I want to be able to, when my daughter was talking about elders one day, I didn't know what she was talking about. And then I'm like, oh, it's what she learned in school. And I'm like, I'm so happy that she's 8 years old and she's learning this, because I am almost 48 years old and I'm starting to learn this. And I'm so grateful, because I want her to have that balance, because we are also Catholic, and there is good and bad in everything. And I want her to just be informed. I want us all to be informed. I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for all of you ladies and Patrick, but I just want us to be informed. I want us to know. When I hear this story, I'm like, I try to put myself in her position. I just can't. I genuinely, I can't, because I've never been in that situation. It's extremely difficult, and my heart goes out to her, and I hope that we're all learning daily something. So
there is a lot of books based on true stories.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Always.
They say that victors are the ones that usually write the history books, right?
So yeah,
a lot of what we've read in history books is wrong. And I was always so proud to be, like a founding person, like from a family that had been here for so long. I mean, my family was on the first voters list in 1886 here in Vancouver. And now I'm like, wow, were my relatives assholes? Were they terrible people? Like, were they treating people poorly? I mean, my dad talks about, people that were coming through during the Depression, and people would get off trains and knock on your door and beg for food. And I heard that they, would bring strangers into their home and feed them and that kind of thing. But were they good people, or were they assholes to a whole group of people? And, should I be proud to be a founding family of Vancouver, or should I be embarrassed about it? Because I don't know. I don't know how they treated people back in the day. So it's a new way of thinking that, you know, there's no pride that comes along with it. We were assholes. We were absolute assholes to the people that lived here. And the French were, I mean, I'm learning a lot of this myself. Like I'm reading a lot of books about it. You know, people from Quebec, they intermarried with these people. I mean, you know, some of it was maybe for the fur trade, and maybe, like, I'm sure a lot of it was for love and that kind of thing as well. And, you know, people that were, you know, native to this area and, you know, they fell in love with them. But the Quebecois were way more respectful of the traditions that were already here. Like the English just came in and they just stomped all over everything. They made false promises. Then, sorry, I'm ranting.
Well, so were the Ukrainian people, because they were so poor, the Ukrainians, where they came in and they actually made friends with the Cree people. That's why some of the Cree ladies wear the headscarves, the bush cap, because they were given to them, they were trading. And they, but they were one of the people that the Cree people really interact with it.
I worked within sorry.
I would like to share a story with you guys, which is very interesting. So I'm from Greece, right? Born and raised there, been in Canada 7 years. My mom visited Vancouver in 2018. Before she comes, it's like, make sure I want to meet the First Nations. I was like, what do you mean? Make sure you're going to introduce me to your First Nations friends. I'm like, Mom, I don't have First Nations friends. Like, I don't think so. I can have First Nation friends. So she came here. She loves them. She used to read all the books about First Nations, she knows the stories. She came here and I had to take her and to took picture and to talk with them and be all about admiration. And to everybody that I went to Canada and I made to make an album with the pictures.
I have something. I was working in Winnipeg within an Indigenous community, and several women elders from the Bay Area were helping us out in supporting that community, and they all four of these beautiful, and they were so broken because all of the young people, we were serving a community that was struggling with addiction and poverty and homelessness, and these were their people, and none of the younger people knew their language, and they were just broken about it. And all of these women, I found out after years of relationship, had been in the residential schools, and I don't know, this was really hard for me today because it reminded me of the pain of that, seeing them suffering daily while their young people are just lost, right? So yeah.
I wanted to share also like experience. Like I moved to Canada, and the first family that we encounter and we meet through my husband's work was a First Nation family, and we love them. We share with them, and the grandma of that family invited us to go to the territory, and she had a really high position there. We wasn't able to travel that day with her, but she bring us a beautiful like blanket with wolves, and it's so good. I had that experience. Like Hiraki, I can introduce you to my friend Mark and his family. He's amazing, and I wish everyone have the privilege to know more about First Nation culture.
I think one of the things that really stood out to me about Kaylin tonight is, you know, the question was asked, what can we do, us non-Indigenous people? Yeah. What I heard was listen, not talk, talk, but listen. And I think it's so important because at this point in time, you know, sharing anything, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to offend anyone. I don't want to get it wrong, but I also want to be responsible for my own education and not ask people that are marginalized and have been scrutinized and murdered by our government and our churches to please educate me. So it is our job to go and get educated so that we can learn how to support the Indigenous people. What I think is miraculous is they're not out for blood. They want peace. They want to sit with us. They want to have these conversations, but they don't want us to talk. They want us to listen.
Yeah.
Because there is so much trauma, and it is intergenerational, and there's so many things that were passed downhill because of actions of my forefathers and many other people here who need to take responsibility for our actions and be accountable to the people whose lives we tried to snuff out. Really, and I think it's so important to understand that when someone tells you a story, a survivor tells you a story, listen and believe them. And there is no doubt, now that we're finding bodies, 1,505 as of today.
Yeah.
And there will be probably potentially thousands more, and some that will never be found and never be recovered. And think about that from the point of view of being a mother or a grandmother or a daughter. That is your family. They love you. And to have people rip them away, there are things that need to be answered for. And I think it's so, so, so important that we all get educated and do what we can, take action, do something.
I think it's important too to remember, like, we, as Kaylin was saying, it takes many generations to go through so many things. Like, just because I say I'm here to listen to you, I don't expect, why should they believe me? They may just look at me and think I'm not going to believe you because of things that have happened generations and generations behind them. And it's just, this is going to take time. We are all here for the same reason and from different walks of life. And it's going to take people time. It's going to take time for me to understand. It's going to take someone to trust, a long time to trust me.
Yeah, it's going to take time also, but you also have to do the effort to listen to those people.
Absolutely. The listening and tagging is what is
and believe them. And
Can
not
I ask you guys a question? The ladies here who identify with the Caucasian church or the Christian church or whatever, whichever church, how are you feeling being part of the church? How is this affecting you? That your church is responsible for this? Where are you? Where is this sitting with you?
In shock.
I'm honestly, my feelings are all over the map right now. I actually haven't been in a church in so long because of COVID. But I've been Catholic all my life. I'm raising my daughter this way. For me, religion has always been that there's something else out there. That's just where I believe. I hate to say, it's not like I fall. There's things I don't agree with. We could go on and on about that. That's a whole other.
Yeah, I don't want to.
It's very difficult. You're right, Kathy. That's a whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, I totally appreciate your input and your comments, but I think that, does anyone want to speak to it, Anna, outside of Stephanie, anyone else want to sort of speak up and then we're going to wrap right after this because we do have other things going on. So
I was raised as a Catholic and I grew through the system, but I never believe in a system. I actually witnessed a lot of corruption. As you all know, I like to read, and I know that the Roman Catholic Church are one of the wealthiest church in the world. But the corruption, it's unbelievable. But what hurts me the most is the fact that they brainwash their people to say that those children died because lack of medicine. That's not true. So the abuse was never mentioned, like sexual abuse. You are a priest, you are a nun, and you're abusing a child, not even a full adult. I mean, as adults, sex could be consented, right? But as a child, what kind of monster are you? And you get up, you go on your knees and you pray every day? They should be shot. Or they're burning in hell if they, by now.
But I think if you're identifying, I'm not taking anything away from what happened. If you're a Catholic or a Christian in your faith, you have your faith. Unfortunately, it's the people that run these religious, the churches, whether they're Catholic, Christian, whatever you want to call them, it's people that are running them. People make mistakes. People can be corrupted. It's how you yourself portray or follow your faith. So for me, my faith is with God. I was born and raised Catholic. I've never seen the corruption personally. That does not mean that I don't believe it, because I've heard the stories. So I do believe the stories, because people are human and people make mistakes and people can be cruel. People can be evil. I don't know.
You're a mother. These are children. Imagine
I'm not.
That were taken from your home without anything.
I'm not defending that at all. I think that is completely wrong. I'm saying that, like everyone's saying, you have to know the facts. I'm believing the facts. I'm just saying the church is corrupt. It's the people that run the church are corrupt. It does not mean that every Catholic is. That's what I'm saying. But no, I'm not condoning anything that was done to these children, because you're right, I'm a mother. I would never, ever want that to happen to anyone, because it's wrong. I don't care who you are, it is wrong.
Yeah.
I am also Catholic, and I believe that it's important that we are aware how we can heal and forgive and to look for. And of course, in our church, in the first week I was in Mass, our priest read a letter from our Archbishop and explain and say that there needs to be work to be done. And of course, I am glad that people is talking and we recognize our mistakes. I am part of that church, but the government was the one who take away the children, and where they're running.
Yeah, but who raised the children?
Sorry, as Chiara mentioned, is everyone is different. And in different churches, they make mistakes and big mistakes.
That's not a mistake. Ripping children from First Nations is not a mistake. That is not a mistake. You are intentionally ripping children out of their families, and you're intentionally trying to take away their language, their culture, their life as they know it. That is not a mistake.
That is not a
This
mistake.
is an intent.
And they knew about it. And they hid it. And they did nothing. And the system of the Catholic Church did not apologize immediately decades ago.
You're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute, Judith. We can't hear you.
I say that, yes, that is a mistake I am talking about. Exactly what you mentioned about.
Yep, it's not a
people
mistake.
People are disagreeing. It wasn't a mistake. It was not a mistake.
I say it was a mistake. Yeah. Everybody made mistakes in different parts.
This was not a mistake, Judith, is what I'm saying. This was intentional. The church and the government intentionally tore children from these families. This is not a mistake. This is a choice.
Yeah, and they intentionally hid it.
Yeah.
And then did not own up when they were caught.
Every time they catch a priest sexually abuse a child, they take that priest from that parish and they move him to another church.
That's right.
What?
Yeah. So you done enough damage in this church. You go to the other church, maybe more
another damage.
But when they took their children from their home, was their intention as a godly people to be good to those children, more so that those children were forced by the government. There should be compassion and preach the word of God. Say, please, let's pray those for children to be strong and healthy and go back to their families, not taking them into the back and sexually abuse them. So is that a mistake? That's not a mistake. That was intentionally done.
Intentional. Yep. I agree.
And that level of victimization is going to take generations and generations to heal. The government has a part in that, and there needs to be a level of responsibility taken by government and not be begged to put flags at half-mast and actually give First Nations drinking water that they've been asking for and begging for and promised for dozens of years. There is systematic racism going on, and it was the government and the churches that perpetrated the victims of this.
Yes.
And so tomorrow I won't be celebrating Canada Day.
That's right. It's one day. It's one day for generations and generations of things that have happened. Absolutely. Neither will we. But we are going to wrap tonight's session. I just ask you tomorrow to think about the things that Kaylin said. We'll be bringing in other people to talk about this because, as I mentioned, it's not over. It's not over. So thanks so much, everyone who's watching. Please remember to subscribe, follow, and share our posts. If you have questions, follow us at the 5 Minute Chat on Facebook and on our YouTube channel. Thanks so much, you guys.
Thank you.
Good night.